Hello and welcome to the CAPE podcast. CAPE standing for the Child Abuse Prevention and Education Podcast. My name is Kristi McVie and I am an ex-West Australian police officer who spent 10 years with the police where I was trained as a specialist child interviewer and a child abuse detective. This podcast is all about sharing what I learnt, saw and knew whilst investigating child sexual abuse in the police force. It is also about sharing the knowledge that I gained in that time that helped me with my own parenting of my then 2-year-old daughter. My mission is to help share my knowledge and to help you in your role as parents to keep your kids safe, along with guest experts in the field of child abuse prevention and education, both in person and online. Thank you so much for joining in on the fight to prevent child sexual abuse. Your kids will thank you for it. Okay, and welcome to Operation CAPE podcast, the Child Abuse Prevention and Education podcast for parents. My name's Kristi and I'm with Jessica Smith from ClickSafe Intelligence all the way over in the USA. I met Jessica over in the Gold Coast when I attended the Youth Technology and Virtual Communities Conference hosted by Task Force Argos. And the Queensland Police Service end of April, and I was on the edge of my seat the whole time I was listening to her present. It was an amazing presentation. I had so many notes and so many screenshots of her presentation, and I just had to have a chat. And we've now, been talking for a little bit. It's now June, and we're finally got onto a call, and we're finally going to do some collaboration here because we've both got the same mission, which is to protect kids. So thank you so much for jumping on, Jess, and having a chat with me.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. I can't believe it's already June. The days just fly by, but I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah, I know. It's just like, I keep going, oh yeah, last month. And then it's like, no, actually it was 2 months ago or 2.5 months ago now. And I'm like, but it was such a big conference. I really enjoyed all of it. It was a very exhausting conference. But before we get into talking about that, tell me a bit about how you got into or how you started ClickSafe Intelligence.
So my background is in intelligence and investigations. I went to school for criminal justice over here in the US, and this is just kind of where my heart is. I love to solve puzzles. I love to find the details and put things together. I knew that I never really wanted to kick in doors for a living, but I wanted to be a part of the law enforcement process, and intelligence analysis is the perfect way to be a part of that process without actually having to go chase people down in a dark alleyway. So I spent some time in the public sector, moved over to the private sector where I focus on fraud and cybersecurity now, and I knew that I wanted to spend some time in child exploitation. That was where my heart was ever since I, had my first job as a work study student in undergrad. So I was like, I need to figure out how I'm going to get there. I don't really know how, especially now that I'm literally working in fraud in the private sector. And I happened to I attended a conference with the National Child Protection Task Force, and they were looking for volunteers at the time. And I said, well, I'm an intel analyst. I have open source intelligence skills that I could potentially lend to missing and exploited child cases. Maybe I'll offer up my skills and see if they would like me to help with these cases. And lo and behold, I got brought on as a volunteer, spent a couple of years volunteering with them, loved every second of it. But it got to be really, really frustrating because you just see the same type of cases over and over and over again. And despite that, it's a wonderful thing to be a part of that response effort, you get tired and angry seeing these poor families get destroyed by predators, and you hear them say, I thought we were doing everything right. We would talk about, online safety, and we had good privacy settings, and they would run into the same issues over and over again. And I said, what can I do as an intel analyst? I've never been in law enforcement. I haven't spent a ton of time in child exploitation. What can I actually bring to the table to help with prevention? And I said, well, I spend a lot of time on the dark web hunting predators, and there's a lot of information here. I'm going to start analyzing it, and I'm going to look for the patterns, and I'm going to look for the trends. I'm going to look for what they're saying about how they are exploiting kids, what
Mm.
platforms they're going to, where they're having success, where they're not having success, how they're doing it, how they're treating toddlers with hands-on abuse versus a 15-year-old with online abuse. And I'm going to start building education around that. And it'll be education that's coming straight from the predator's mouth. And that's how ClickSafe was born.
Oh my God, I've got chills because you are my hero.
Thank
You are my
you.
hero because I have worked in the police. I was a detective. I worked in child abuse. I sat across the interview table from from child abusers and from children who had been abused, and I listened to their stories. And for me, you know, coming out of the police after 10 years, I was like, I was so like you, just so not sick, but so tired of hearing, you know, we did everything. We thought we were doing everything. We thought we were, we had it. We thought our kids knew better. We didn't know. We do, you know, and all I can think of is prevention is the only way to slow this down.
Right. Right.
And
There's
you
no
just said
way
everything.
you can't, yeah, you can't prosecute your way out of it.
No.
It's not going to happen. And so you have to stop them before it happens. I mean, we have to get ahead of them. That's the only way we're going to win.
I know. And I love that you're literally using their own, because, you know, the dark web is full of nefarious, horrible things, but the fact that you're using that against them, hallelujah. Like I just love that. So when did you start ClickSafe? So when I met you through the conference that we went to, but when did you start ClickSafe, and where are you going with it? What's happening with it?
So it's still a little new. We just had our first birthday in April. So literally, I think like April 12th. So maybe like 2 weeks before the conference or something, not even like that. I hit my 1 year mark, and my goal is to eventually build downloadable trainings that parents can access anytime, anywhere. And the trainings will all be audience specific. So if you have a 3-year-old toddler and you have a preteen and you have a teenager, there is going to be a specific training for each of your kids. If you have a child who has developmental difficulties, there's going to be training for you specifically. If you have a child who identifies as non-binary, there's going to be a training specifically for you, because predators target each of these victim sets very differently. And they talk about that. They share all of the idiosyncrasies about their grooming tactics and how they differ between those different victimologies. So I want to make sure that every single piece of education that I put out, where there is overlap, that I explain that overlap, but then where there are those divisions between them, that I offer those up, and so that you can pick and choose what education is right for you. So downloadable trainings. Hopefully I would love to eventually get some curriculum built for schools and offer that up when and where it is needed or desired. I've got my TikTok, I've got my Instagram, I've got my Facebook, because that's the way everybody consumes education or information these days. And until then, I'm just gonna like keep putting my foot to the pedal and the floor, and conferences and getting the word out this way. I love that I'm starting to build partnerships with people like you, and we can just collaborate, like bringing our experience together. Like you've got the experiential side, which I don't really have other than sitting behind a computer. So to be able to like bring those pieces of knowledge together, I love that, because we can fill in each of those little holes in the boat, and then hopefully eventually keep it from sinking.
Well, and there's not, you know, there's a lot of people in this space doing what we're doing, but it doesn't matter. There's still so many people who don't know what we know. And and you know, on days when I feel like, oh, you know, there's already so many people doing this stuff that I'm doing and talking about.
Gosh.
I keep, you know, have those little moments where I'm like, oh, do people really want to hear from me personally? And I'm reminded that there's still so many people who don't know what we know. And it's really important.
It's so amazing. I get that like imposter syndrome all the time. And I mean, I sat on this for a very long time before a colleague finally said, if you don't do it, I'm going to do it. And I was like, well, wait a minute, you can't do that. I'm like, no, this is my idea. And so that was, but he wasn't going to actually do it, but that was the kick in the pants that I needed to actually go out and do this.
Yeah.
But I was so nervous because the education space is very saturated, but everybody brings a different perspective. And despite how much education there is out there, every single day I talk to somebody new who goes, I had no idea this was such a pervasive problem. Oh my gosh.
I know, because I was just interviewed on Sunrise yesterday morning for online sextortion. It was like like a 2-minute thing, like 2.1, like 17 seconds, 2 minutes, 17-second thing. It was so not enough time to even delve into it. But the fact that we're finally getting news to sit up and listen and talk about it, so much better than what we're doing. So let's talk about a bit of what you do in regards to sitting on the dark web. Like, your presentation was right at the end of the conference, and it was the best part of the conference. There was a couple of people that were like stand up ovation, like, but for me personally, you had data, you had information, you were like giving us exactly what these people on they're not even people, but these predators on the dark web are saying about kids and how to target and groom them. And it was so interesting to me because I'm a mum, I have a teenage daughter, and you know, parents all around us, you know, I can sit there until I'm blue in the face telling them, but you know what smacks someone in the face the most is when you actually have the words coming out of a predator's mouth or a story that relates to that smacks them in the statistics. Bore people, but when you've got actual stories, they love it. And I was like, I've got so many screenshots, and I'm going to have to like sit down and go through them again. So tell me, what is it that you do on the dark web, and what are you seeing?
So what I do is it's a variety of different things. So I look for the patterns and the trends within the linguistic text. So I don't touch imagery. Law enforcement is all over the imagery, and their job is to identify the people who are producing the imagery, the people who are sharing the imagery, the victims within the imagery. I'm interested in what they're saying about the imagery and what they're saying to each other about what they do, because law enforcement just doesn't have time to delve into that unless it pertains to a specific investigation and it's going to help them identify who is attached to a certain image. They just don't have the time to look at that from a macro level. And because I am a gigantic nerd, I love language, and I love the story that it can tell about a person or a group of people. And so what I will do is I will use a variety of different tools or just manual scraping and go in and say, okay, I want to know what predators within this particular forum or across these different forums are saying about Instagram. And I will scrape all of that data and I will look at the trends. I'll say, where are they talking about Instagram in a positive way? And when I say positive, I mean successful. You know, are they being successful in their grooming tactics? How are they talking about it in terms of it not being useful to them? And just as an example, one of the trends that I found recently that continues to pop up about Instagram is this managed by mom accounts, which, you know, like I've done some TikToks on it and stuff, but
I don't think most people know what they are, because I had someone ask me yesterday, what is a managed by mom account? Like, it's not as popular in Australia as it is in the US, right? So can you just explain managed by mom accounts?
Yeah, so managed by mom account is when a young child has an account that it features all of these videos and images of the child, and the parent is actually involved in the production of those images. Often the account in the profile will say managed by mom. And sometimes these photos and images are completely innocent and they're non-nude imagery. Sometimes they do get a bit risque. There are swimsuit photos. There are, maybe like a little less clothing, and they're more model-esque and influencer type of things. But the predators love these accounts, they eat them up, and they look for them, they share the handles of them, they download the imagery and the videos that are posted to them. They even go so far as to comment on them, because it's not illegal to be a creep.
You said that at the conference, and I have used that, what you've said, a couple of times. It's not illegal to be a creep, because these guys are looking for these accounts where basically it's almost to the point where you're producing content for them, because it is exactly what they're looking for. And one of the things, and like trigger warning, I'm going to talk about the nitty gritty, is that these guys don't care if your child is nude or not. They're going to get off on their pictures anyway.
Yep.
Because because what I learned from child sex offenders and how they work is that most of what they want to do is in their mind. Like they're they're
the fantasy.
That's it. They're fantasizing about what they do. So they'll use your child's picture to fantasize about what they want to do with that child. It doesn't have to be a nude image, because their brain is going to fill in the blanks.
Exactly.
And they've probably seen enough child exploitation material to be able to fill in the blanks. So the thing is that, it's a big problem, and it is becoming a bigger problem. Like I have reached out to some parenting accounts or to accounts and said, hey, I think the image you sent, like, I understand, maybe just think about, who can see what school they're at or where you're going to be, or maybe post after you've been to this place instead of whilst you're there, because who's to say you don't have someone, stalking your family? And but it's not always well received.
No, I've thought about reaching out to some of these young girl accounts on a number of times, and even trying to just get a hold of like their agents or their parents. You have to go through a million different hoops, and I'm sure I would just get lost in a sea of emails. And these photos make them a lot of money, and how do you compete with that?
Well, and it's literally exploitation of children. It is literally the exploitation of children when parents are making money off children's videos and photos, and it's social media. And what I don't understand as a parent and as a protective parent, there was, like, when I started using social media in 2008, my daughter was just first born. So there's no doubt photos of my daughter in her nappy, or, because we didn't know better, right? We didn't know better. We were just sharing it with our little bubble of friends, thinking we would sharing our lives without. There's some things that I'm probably, I know there's one picture in my mind where my daughter was standing looking out over the ocean, and she'd stripped off, like, she was 3. She'd stripped off all her clothes, and we were on a beach. There was no one around, and she stripped off. And I took that photo and I put it on Facebook years ago. And I kick myself now. I'm like, how unthoughtful, like, how did I not know that? I was just a police officer at that stage, but we didn't know. But now
because our parents took the same Kodak photos of us when we were babies, and they were in the photo albums of us, like in the kiddie pool, running around naked. And we as humans are meant to form relationships, which means we are predisposed to trust.
Yeah.
It's biologically beneficial for us to do that. And so we don't want to have to think about those things. No, it's not something that our brains are wired to do until you become people like us, and then it's all you think about.
I know. And so with these, so Instagram's a particular problem, and I find that I'm getting contacted now from kids who are being sextorted, right? So financial sextortion.
Oh my gosh.
And they obviously see my TikToks because we both talk about it, but then they come and contact me through Instagram because that's the easier way to message someone. So so financial sextortion is massive, and this is what we're talking about as well. In yes, these mummy ran accounts and these predators on the dark web are talking about how to groom children, because there's I would define it as maybe 2 types of groomer: the financial groomer and the one that's doing it to get their rocks off. Would you say that's about right?
100%. Yep.
So tell me about both of those. Like, the ones that are grooming for their own pleasure, they're different because they're going to put in the time and energy and effort, aren't they?
Yes. Yep. So the ones that are going to groom for sexual pleasure or even a relationship. Now I'm going to go and you had me use air quotes because it's a relationship to them, right?
Yeah.
It's something that is it's emotional, it's mutual, it's there's a connection there. And just like any sort of adult relationship, you put in time, you put in effort, you put in resources. You're going to look to build hobbies that you enjoy together. You're going to look for common interests. You're going to look to, share hardships and things that you can find in common. You're going to look to see like where there's this push pull of energy, like what kind of things are they comfortable with? What kind of things are they not comfortable with? Where can I push the boundaries of things? Like I just got done talking about boundary testing. And those individuals are much more willing to take the time in grooming. I was just listening to or watching something where they were talking about like cases that have been going on for years, where there was a conversation that had been going back and forth, like a grooming conversation. And that is how willing these predators are to take the time and energy. It can be quick. Predators, I think they can turn a conversation sexual in about 3 minutes. I think that's kind of like an average, but
it depends on the child though as well.
Weeks or months. Yep. But the financial predators is all about their ROI, their return on their investment, right? So these individuals that are often doing things for a financial return, it's a churn and burn, right? So they don't want to have to invest a lot of time and energy. The individuals who are saying, I'm going to release all of this, I have your parents' names, I have your friends, they don't, because it's not worth their time or their energy to go out and find that stuff. They might go through one or two of your photos and find somebody who is tagged and use that as leverage. Say like, well, I know that your best friend here is Katie, or I know that she went to Mexico with you or something like that. And they'll use that to invoke fear, but it's not worth their time because in all likelihood, they're doing this to 7 or 10 other people at the same time that they're doing this to you, because they're going to extort you. They're going to say, well, you need to get us $5,000, knowing that they might only get $100 from you. And as soon as they do, and as soon as you say, I don't have anything else to give you, they're going to threaten you a few more times, and then they're going to split and they're going to go target somebody else, which is why we say, don't give in to their demands, block them and move on, because they don't have the information of your friends and family. They're not going to release it because it's not worth their time to go find your friends and family's information.
In most cases, but I have had a few kids come to me and they're like, they have released my photos. They have gone and sent them to my friends, which makes no sense. It's like when you a drug dealer threatening to kill someone to get their money, but then they don't, and then why would you kill someone? Because you're not going to get your money regardless, right? So once it's done,
I think
it's done.
The ones that they do fall more into like the chaos causing folks. For them, it's not about the money. It's not about getting their like, it's about power at that point. I like that. It reminds me of the Amanda Todd case more than anything. Like for him, it was more about the terror and the chaos and the power than it was about like the sexual abuse or anything else. Like he just loved the terror that he was invoking on people. And when you're dealing with a sadist like that, truly, like there's no way out. They're gonna
do whatever they want.
I mean, that's one of those things. Like, and I don't want to like make people say like, well, there's no hope, because there's always hope, right? Like that's why law enforcement and people like us are here, because we want to track these people down and kick in their door. Not me, because I don't kick in doors, but
but I know what you mean. Like it would be nice if there was an end goal where they get stopped. We want them to stop. We don't
100%.
want them to have that power over anyone. So that's cool that you've explained that, because I like you, I wouldn't say I was a nerd because I didn't even finish high school, right? So here I didn't finish high school. I became a police officer in my late 20s. I was a detective. I did everything. I was obviously intelligent, but I didn't finish school. But
you did all the super cool stuff though, which is like way more than I was willing to do.
But you know, the thing is that even though I didn't do all that, I saw patterns in the child sex offending. So that's what led me to write a book about it, because I was like, they have ways. They all do the same things. It just
They totally do.
They are always operating the same. Like it's literally tick one, step one, done. It's like they have a master list, and you said that at the start. Like they talk about it, right? They talk about how to groom kids. So what are they talking about when it comes to grooming? Like what's the basics of it? Probably not. There's probably not a basic.
Do you want to talk about online, or do we want to talk about in person, or do we want to kind of
let's
talk about
let's do online
level
for now. Yeah, let's iron online for now. Like we'll stick to online so that but yeah, like online grooming, what are the basics that they're doing?
Online is, I mean, they got to pick their target, and that's going to be based on what, age of attraction, gender identity. Do they want to go after somebody who identifies as a female, somebody who identifies as a male? They're going to look for those vulnerabilities if they can see them on the surface, things like that. Yeah. I saw one predator the other day who said, I specifically go after girls who say that they identify as a lesbian, and then I also pretend that I am a lesbian. And that is how I groom and I manipulate them, because it's easy to convince them that I am also a girl.
Wow. Okay.
And then so simply like engaging their target, and if they are wanting to build a relationship, sometimes they will create profiles that look like somebody of the same sex. So male offenders will create profiles that have kittens and puppies and book quotes and things like that, to try to convince another female that like, oh, I'm another girl and I just want to be friends, sort of a thing. And then they move into this weird relationship where it's like, hey, let's send each other photos to compare body types and things like that. Yeah. But more often than not, it's exploiting that romantic relationship element of it, where you're going after someone of the opposite sex, and it's, I think you're cute, I think you're sweet, let's move into this boyfriend girlfriend arena. But it's through this process of creating trust, building rapport, testing the boundaries to see how effective they're going to be, how successful they're going to be, dropping hints about a sexual relationship, seeing if their victim or their target is going to be receptive of that, or if they're going to be like, oh yeah, no, I am not interested at all. Are they going to say at that point, oh, I'm actually a little bit older than I said I was? If their victim's like, oh yeah, I'm out, that predator is going to cut and run, because they know that they're not going to be successful at that point. But if the victim's like, well, it's okay because I really like you and you've been really nice to me, so I'm going to continue the conversation, moving into creating distance between family and support system, becoming that go-to person for their victim, and then eventually moving into the sexual component of that relationship, which can be sending sexually explicit imagery, live webcamming to capture, like whether it's recording or to capture, call it capping, capturing imagery of that live, or eventually trying to convince them to meet in person for hands-on sexual abuse or exploitation. And then the control method or element of that cycle, which is then either continuing some sort of exploitative romantic relationship, which is fictitious, or saying that I'm going to release these videos or these images. So it's that extortion element. Trafficking can even come into place here as well, where they're farming their victim out to friends, different things like that, profiting off of them. There's a lot of methods of control that can come into play at that point.
And that fits, and that a lot of those grooming techniques are the same for in-person grooming. There's a lot of a lot that comes across from both sides. Obviously, when you move into the online world, it can go a lot faster, but it can be just as fast. And with regards to, like, I noticed with most kids that are being targeted online, the ones, you know, these groomers, these people, predators, will throw out their net. And I used to like liken it with your fishing. So they'd throw out their fishing line and they would reel in some fish, and they would be like, right, is this kid like, you know, engaging? And then, you know, the next thing is you know, and then if they weren't, they would drop them and move on to the next, because it takes, they need someone to be just as into what they're doing as they are, even if they don't know what they're doing, right? So I used to see that all the time. And then, but what I found is that you know, most of the parents, what I found is it's like the vulnerable kids, the ones that haven't got supervision. They don't have, a lot of the time, they don't have that parent that they can talk to at home. They haven't been talked to about this stuff. They don't have someone to, you know, they might not have the greatest home life, or they might be struggling at school and don't have good friendships at school, or they're not connected in their relationships. So then they're looking for someone online to be a friend, and these people exploit that. Is that right?
Yeah, it's amazing how impactful, like, friendship, validation, encouragement, and just having even like a one person in your life. My sister is a therapist, and she works with a lot of adult clients who have gone through incredible trauma. And I asked her one time, I said, you know, your clients who have endured a lot of sexual abuse, whether it's familial, you know, like whatever it is, you know, what would have changed things for them? And she said, if anybody had listened, if I had somebody who I felt like I could have gone to and told and been heard and trusted that I would have been believed and heard, I would have gone to them.
Yeah.
And I think that's a little bit different than, you know, like the preventative side of having somebody, but having a person, having trusted people in your life, having that protective social circle, where you don't need that validation from other places, is incredibly impactful. And it's an insanely important buffer to protect our kids, you know. So like dance, sports, clubs, just friends that you hang out with, family, you know, extended family members that you spend time with. You know, obviously we have to be careful of all of that stuff too, but like having people in your life who you feel like are kind of that army, that you have your tribe, it makes a difference, because loneliness is, I think, a huge gateway to exploitation.
Yeah, that's hugely, like, that whole point is that is exactly how people exploit another person. That's how predators
adults
exploit
too.
Yeah, adults, children, you know, that and loneliness seems to be the biggest thing that we're dealing with when it comes to any kind of exploitation, whether it be through domestic violence, through online grooming, through child abuse, is that, you know, and that's the whole point of being groomed. Like, that's the whole point of the grooming process, is to create that loneliness so that they can fill that void. But if it's already there, it actually makes a child even more vulnerable, or a person even more vulnerable. I concur with everything you just said. You know, the children that really that I sat across the table from and I got their evidence from, a lot of them were, you know, struggling because, you know, the ones that got out, like the ones that the abuse was stopped really quickly, and you know, something might have happened, but it was like, boom, they went straight to an adult and someone did something and someone believed them, and they were the kids that were going to be okay, right? The ones that had no one to talk to, and they were really, you know, they had nowhere to turn, and then that abuse continues because they've got nothing, no one. And and one of the things I keep saying to parents and keep trying to share with parents is that we need to create a safe space for our children to be able to come to us no matter what. And if you know, because that is what's going to stop the exploitation. It's not an if, it's a when. Our children will be approached by a stranger online.
Yeah.
They will be someone will attempt to exploit them. The minute they get a device, the minute they've got a freaking device in their hand, someone is going to try and exploit your child. There's no if, it's when. And so it means that we have to do the work to ensure that they know what they need to know, which means they need to know these things like you just explained, what it looks like to be groomed and how they work, and you know what to watch out for. And you can do that from a very young age with very, you know, age appropriate language. I mean, when my daughter was 10, I used to say things like, have any of your friends ever been asked for nude photos online? Because she didn't have as much access as her friends, right? But I used her friends as a way to get in, like a gateway into talking about it, because I knew that talking to
100%.
kids and saying, have you ever done this? Have you ever had this happen? Like, whoa, put up the roadblocks. We're not talking about it. But if you use their friendships as a way to get into talking about, like, hey, has any of your friends who have TikTok, do they ever, you know, see anything inappropriate? Because the kids are going to talk about it, right? Yeah. So that's how I do it. Have you got any tips like that in how to talk about this stuff with parents, or for parents with their children?
You know, my kids right now are pretty young. So I have a 3-year-old and a 7-year-old. But I think, like you just said, it is so important to start things as young as possible. And one of the approaches that I take is empowerment looks the same across everything, right? So if you empower your kid to be comfortable saying no in one facet, hopefully that is going to be a catalyst to empower them to say no across multiple facets. And so from the moment that my kids could like speak and verbalize, and even before then, when they were starting to sign, we would do games about physical boundaries. And so we would do, you know, because tickling is so fun with little toddlers, and stuff, we would do red light, green light, or stop, go, and they would get to choose what they wanted to do. So we would tickle and they would say stop, and we would stop, and then they would say go, and we would go. And the whole point is to show them, when you say stop, mom and dad stop. And that you have the power to say stop. And obviously you have to build in layers for, you know, like, well, we have to wear seatbelts in the car because that is what keeps us safe. We have to put coats on outside. We have to wear shoes when there's snow on the ground and things like that. But when it comes to your body, that you have the power to say no, and that if somebody does not respect when you say no, that is okay to come and tell us, and that is a problem. And so as they grow, we build in that same stuff for other things, you know, like if somebody is ever telling my daughter, like, well, you have to keep this a secret, she's like, no, I don't have to keep anything a secret. You don't get to decide what I like. We don't keep secrets in my house. Or if somebody is telling her, you know, you have to do, other than like teachers with assignments and things, if she's at a friend's house and a friend is saying, well, you have to play this weird game with me that makes her feel uncomfortable, she's like, no, I don't. That makes my body feel uncomfortable. Like that's impacting my person in a way that I don't like. I don't have to do anything. So,
and helping them have the language as well. Like you just helped your daughter, and obviously your son have that language, right? So you've given them permission to say no, and to anyone, including, and I actually said that same thing to last week. I was like, we need to give our children permission to say no to adults, because we were taught, you know, back in the day, listen to your elders, do what your teacher says, you know, always do what you're told. Children are seen and not heard. But in this day, now we're stopping that. We don't do that anymore. And teach our kids that if they say no, then it's okay to say no. And, you know, like you said, if it's a seatbelt or something, there's going to be a discussion, like we have to wear a seatbelt. But they're, you know, we're still listening, and they're still being heard. And that is going to stop them being a victim of, you know, this type of predatory behavior, because they know their rights within their body. They know themselves. They know when they feel unsafe, and we've given them permission to say no.
Right.
So good.
I think helping them lean into those intrinsic feelings. We like push that out of us as like humans, like that instinct and stuff. And I mean, for a variety of reasons, we don't have to get into that, but like I have had to work to like reinstill that into myself as an adult, to be able to like lean into that and trust my instincts. And I'm working very hard to making sure that I foster that with my kids. Like, if you don't feel right, if something makes you uncomfortable, tell us, and we're gonna leave. Like, that's okay. You can like, this like, we're at this store, like, we don't have to be here. This isn't a big deal, or whatever it is. I want them to feel like they have a sense of control over their person, to the extent possible. Like, we still need to function in society and stuff,
but it's interesting because my same as you, it was she was only 3 when she was 2 when I joined the police, 3 when I became a specialist child interviewer and started interviewing kids, learned about protective behaviors, which is what you are basically talking about. And then she started learning, like, she used to say, "Stop it, I don't like it," and put her hand out with it like a stop sign. So when she didn't want something to happen to her and she didn't like something, she's like, "Stop it, I don't like it." And then as she got older, like the tickling thing, right, she would say, and we started talking about consent around 6, 7 years old. And she would say, then she would say, "I don't give you consent to touch me. I don't give you consent to tickle me." and that has continued into her teenage years. Like, she will say something like, and obviously we're always respectful of her as best we can, but we're a bit of a jovial family. Like, we roughhouse and stuff like that. And sometimes she'll just go, "I don't consent to you." Like, mostly it's just like, "I don't feel like doing this right now and I don't want to," but she will be like, "I don't give you consent." And so when you're told that as an adult, it like literally makes you back up and go, "Oh, okay, I respect your consent because I respect her wishes."
There's so much power in that word. Compared to just like, "Stop it, I don't like that," which is a problem. Like, it shouldn't be that way. Somebody saying "stop it" should be enough. But for her to say, "Stop it, I don't consent to that," boom, like,
it's going to stop behavior right in the minute. And because we were talking about it, and I think you're on the same wavelength as me, by continuing this conversation as they age, and it becomes more of about, because a lot of parents, I had a 70-year-old grandmother. I wrote a whole chapter about consent in my book, about, age of consent laws in Australia, and also what consent actually means. And I had a 70-year-old grandmother contact me and said, "No one has ever explained consent to me, and I can't believe how many times my consent has not been respected. And I didn't know I could say no." A 70-year-old grandmother. And like, it broke my heart to hear that. But she read my book for the sole purpose so that she could help her grandkids. And so she was like, "I'm so glad I know this now." And I thought, my heart broke, because I was thinking, and so there's generations of people who haven't been taught about consent, and that's why we're in the space where we're at, where people aren't respecting consent. And now we're changing that. We're going to change that. You and I and the rest of us, we're changing that. All right. Well, last question for you. So I had this saying when I was writing my book. I just kept thinking, if parents knew what I knew, they would do things differently. And I'm sure if parents knew what you knew, they would do things differently. So what do you want parents to know?
It's really hard to choose just one thing, but I think the biggest thing and the most important thing that I would want to tell parents is to be a safe space for your children always. Like, that doesn't mean that accountability goes out the window. That doesn't mean that boundaries don't have to be respected and enforced. But to tell your children, "Look, mistakes happen. We're human. We all mess up from time to time. If you ever mess up, it does not matter the mistake. I will always love you, and I will always help you navigate that situation. Even if you don't mess up, it doesn't even have to be on them. But if there's ever anything that happens that you need help, you have a safe space here, and I will be your person. I will be your advocate. I will be your safety net." And if you have to write that down and put that on a piece of paper, or do something to give that to your child, so that if God forbid, like something happens and they are so scared and they need to come to you, and they have to say, Mom, Dad, you remember, you promised you would help me, to be that reminder for you as a parent, like, okay, I got to keep my cool in this situation and not lose my mind. Because like I said, with my sister's clients, so every single one of them said, I just wish I had somebody who I could have gone to, who could have helped me, because I might not be sitting here today with as much trauma and healing that I have to do, if I'd had at least just one person who I could have depended on to help me through that first moment of sexual abuse. So be the safe space for your kids, no matter what.
Yeah, that's so powerful. And everything you said, I agree with, because that's what I saw in my 10 years in the police. So thank you so much. So, and I'm really excited to collaborate more. Check out, before we go, tell us how we can find you on all your socials.
Oh, okay. So website is just clicksafeintelligence.com. TikTok and Instagram, the handles are just ClickSafe Intelligence. Twitter, I know not a lot of people use Twitter. I don't update it quite as much. That is ClickSafe Intel, because character limit. And then Facebook is also just ClickSafe Intelligence.
Perfect.
So facebook.com/ClickSafe Intelligence.
Yeah, perfect. So I really highly recommend to go follow Jess, because she's got some amazing videos. I really love the videos you just did on the grooming cycle and all of the other stuff, always pumping out new stuff. So thank you so much. And we'll do this again soon.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Kristi. It was really great being here.
Thank you for listening to this podcast episode. Education empowers children and it empowers parents, and education prevents abuse. That is why I'm here, and that is why you are here. So thank you. If you want any further information or support, follow me on social media, either under Kristi McVie or KPAU social media accounts. I'll put the links in the show notes. You can also purchase a signed copy of my book, Operation KidSafe, via the website at www.cape-au.com. Also on my website is a free ebook titled 10 Tips to Keep Your Kids Safe from Abuse, and self-paced courses for parents to help you in your journey of child abuse prevention. Don't forget to join our free Facebook group called Operation KidSafe Parenting Group. Please see the show notes for any extra information, links and help should you be looking for extra support. Thank you once again for giving a shit about preventing child sexual abuse. See you next time.